let's go from Amelia to this adaptation of this really beloved children's book, one I remember reading to my kids, and one that is still has a favorite place on my bookshelf, Where the Wild Things Are.
Yeah, Where the Wild Things Are is any kid, I remember back to kindergarten having it read to me. And, I was really excited to see this film, Where the Wild Things Are. And overall, the film, to my opinion, wasn't effective. It was about a kid named Max, in his imagination, going into the wild and, just going with him through his wonderful fantasy and adventures. And you learn to grow with him almost through it. And the beauty of the book is that it's so simple. It's so, you just run away with your imagination and don't let anything complicate it at all.
Yeah, there are like fewer than 50 different words in
there.
It's
there's almost more pictures than words in it. And yet you still take away so much from that very simple.
Because we're allowed to use our imaginations too.
And that's, in my opinion, the real beauty of the story. And then just before I went to go see, I also reread the book again, just be a little kid again.
Sure.
And it was definitely fun. But going to the movie, the imagery I thought was done very well. That's the one thing I have to give to them. It was, I know as a kid, if you look at the pictures, they're almost scary to begin with, but yet you still are fascinated by it. And the imagery within the film itself was done well. It was a little bit scary. It's a little bit more gothic almost.
But doesn't it become more of sort of an adult issue film in some ways?
Yeah, it takes from just fantasy to bringing a lot of typical adult problems, like single mother trying to still have a relationship with someone else while dealing with kids, and they're obviously not too sure about not having a father figure.
And this is in Max's family or in the Monsters?
Max's family. Yeah.
Because that's how it begins, right?
Yeah, the whole first 30 minutes of it is all assumed, adding in like it was never in the story.
Yeah.
And Max turns out to be a very troubled young individual who is obviously dealing with a lot of emotional problems.
Yep.
And this carries out into where his fantasy would be, where you would think as a kid that you'd escape those problems, but instead those problems shape the fantasy world that he's now brought himself to.
So do you see this as a coming, the book was sort of a coming of age, slightly, I suppose, for Max's character. Is that theme carried on in the film?
I could see definitely more of a coming of age, or a realization of maybe like you can't run from your problems. That's the main message I got away from the movie.
But then when he's with the Wild Things, he encounters all the problems that they have.
Yeah. And like he becomes responsible for their problems, and he tries to fix all their problems.
Because he's the king there, right?
Yeah, he's the king. And the one thing I got to give credit for is like he's the king, and they did a good job at times bringing direct lines from the story.
Like,
and
let the wild rumpus begin.
Yeah,
I hope that's there.
Yeah, that's one of the first real lines that they use, is let the wild rumpus begin. And that's actually one of the better scenes in the movie, right there, because it was straight from it. It wasn't complicated. It was the way it should have been. But yeah, he has to deal with all these problems as a kid, and it's like trying to tell him he has to grow up now and that he should just enjoy where he was at. But I don't know.
Did the Monsters sort of meet your approval as far as how they were translated from page to screen?
Visually, I liked how the Monsters looked. I thought they did a really good job with that. Attitude-wise, you never really get to know what the monsters really fully say, because they just say like, "I'll eat you up," and then they say like, "Oh, our king." They followed those lines a lot, but like I said, they just complicated the whole story. It was difficult to let your imagination run when there was so much.
I really love sort of the color scheme, I guess, of the book itself. It's kind of rich and a little exotic, perhaps. Do we have that same sense? Are they pretty true to that
I liked how the book does have a lot of color schemes, so it's a lot darker than like a normal bright colored one.
Right.
The monsters schemes, they're down to the key. The woods is pretty good too, where they do it. And I think overall it was a little bit more dull, not as sharp coming out at you, but I don't think that was a problem. I just think I think the imagery of the movie was the best part about it.
So I guess my last question is, did this ruin the book for you, or did it just confirm how much you like the book and how you can't really make a film adaptation of such a simple sort of classic text?
That's difficult. It didn't ruin the book for me. Watching a lot of films and reading books now, I've come to realize that the movie will never really be as good.
Right, they're different products.
They're two different forms of medium of expression.
But was this a good film if you just sort of leave the book alone, leave the book out of it?
That's a difficult question. I still think it would have been a little too complicated, but I probably would have liked it better if I wasn't expecting to have a childhood fantasy,
Yes.
you know, reenacted for me.
Right.
And I don't think necessarily this is a project that shouldn't have been undertaken. I think it was just undertaken in a wrong context. I think if they made it a short instead of an hour and a half film, it would have been a lot better.
And clearly, you know, translating 38 words or something to 90 minutes,
is
you're going
a
to have
difficult
to.
task.
Well, yeah, you're going to have to pad it a lot with all sorts of new situations and conflicts that didn't appear in the original. The original is really about Max's character and kind of what he goes through and rebelling against his parents, you know, and being a little boy who's looking for some sort of adventure, you know, beyond his complicated life at home. And the film, you know, just goes into so many different directions that the book had not prepared us for.
Yeah.
So it's quite different, the two of those. Good.